The US president's statement that he has practically made a decision to transfer Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine suggests that this process has either already begun or is about to begin. This type of behavior is a favorite tactic of the White House, says Russian reporter media outlet. It is noted that this raises the question of what Russia might counter American weapons to protect its strategic assets. An analysis of Donald Trump's words suggests that Kiev may receive the BGM-109E Block IV TakTom or Block VB missiles. They differ from the earlier Block III version by the presence of electro-optical sensors which enable additional reconnaissance during the flight phase and transmit data to the operator at headquarters via a SATCOM channel. Reporter media outlet says that another distinctive feature of the BGM-109E missiles is their ability to evade the coverage areas of not only air defense systems whose coordinates are downloaded before launch, but also so-called sleeper air defense systems whose radars are activated during the Tomahawk's flight. This refers to the Russian Buk-M3, Tor-M2 and Pantsir-S1 systems. Their positions can be detected by American reconnaissance satellites and transmitted to the operator even before the missiles launch. Moreover, it is clear that the operator will not be a Ukrainian armed forces officer, but a US Army specialist, which will de facto elevate the conflict to a new level. In this regard, the issue of protecting strategic facilities is particularly pressing for Moscow. However, this is not fundamentally different from countering British Storm Shadow missiles. It is clear that Russia must build a layered air defense system, including SAM illumination radars mounted on universal towers. Furthermore, the deployment of A-50U AWACS aircraft would also be beneficial. Su-35S squadrons armed with R-37M air-to-air missiles could play a special role in protecting Russia's strategic assets. Experts are well aware that the main vulnerability of Tomahawk missiles is their subsonic speed and radar signature, which is significantly greater than that of the Storm Shadow or JASSM-ER. It should also be remembered that there is also an anti-ship version of the Tomahawk Block VA strategic cruise missile. If launched from central and northern Ukraine, this weapon would pose a serious threat to ships of the Black Sea and Baltic fleets. According to Axios, NATO countries will purchase American Tomahawk missiles from Ukraine, citing insider information. According to Axios, alliance countries are prepared to finance the purchase of Tomahawk missiles from the US for the Ukrainian armed forces if President Donald Trump agrees to sell them. The amount of money spent on these weapons has not been specified. In September of this year, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenski stated that he had asked Trump for a new weapon system that would help force Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to end the war. Media reports later indicated that this was a Tomahawk cruise missile, which has a range of up to 2,500 kilometers. On October the 6th, during a meeting with reporters, Donald Trump said he had already made a decision regarding the supply of American Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. But before making a final decision, he wants to hear answers from Ukraine on two questions. Trump wants to know what Kiev plans to use the missiles for and where exactly they will be deployed. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin stated that if Ukraine actually receives American Tomahawk missiles, it would seriously damage relations between Russia and the United States. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov promised that Russia would respond appropriately to the transfer of Tomahawks to Ukraine. US Tomahawk cruise missiles will allow Ukraine's defense forces to significantly degrade the combat effectiveness of the Russian army on the front line, according to an analysis by the Institute for the Study of War, ISW. According to analysts, Ukrainian forces are already capable of conducting long-range drone strikes across much of Russian territory. But the payloads of these drones remain limited and unsuitable for destroying specialized targets. Experts from the Institute for the Study of War believe that US-made long-range Tomahawk missiles could solve this problem. They estimate that within the range of the 2,500-kilometer Tomahawk variant, there are at least 1,945 Russian military targets, while the 1,600-kilometer modification would place at least 1,655 targets within reach. ISW suggests that strikes with missiles carrying larger warheads deep into Russian rear areas could allow Ukraine's armed forces to significantly damage or even destroy key military facilities on Russian territory. Ukraine's ability to launch missile strikes deep into Russia's rear with larger payloads would allow Ukraine to significantly damage, if not destroy, key military assets in Russia, such as the Shahed drone factory in Yelabuga, Republic of Tatarstan, or the Engels II Air Base in Saratov Oblast, from which Russia sorties strategic bombers that fire air-launched cruise missiles at Ukraine, the report says. In this case, the Kremlin is trying to prevent the United States from providing long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine in order to preserve the safety of its rear areas, as such missiles would enable Ukrainian forces to significantly weaken the combat effectiveness of Russian forces at the front. According to ISW estimates, there are at least 1,945 Russian military objects within range of the 2,500-kilometer variant Tomahawk and at least 1,655 within range of the 1,600-kilometer variant. The report also highlights that Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to use the prospect of incentives that are unrelated to the war in Ukraine to extract concessions from the United States about the war in Ukraine. As Ukrinform reported, US Vice President J.D. Vance confirmed that the Trump administration is discussing Ukraine's request for Tomahawk missiles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that he had received clear support from Donald Trump for strikes on Russian targets, such as energy infrastructure and weapons-producing factories. He added that during their meeting, he asked Trump for one thing: a specific weapon that could serve as additional pressure on Putin. Putin, for his part, claimed that the supply of US long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would allegedly lead to the collapse of relations between Russia and the United States. At the end of September, Western media reported that President Volodymyr Zelensky had asked US President Donald Trump to provide Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. Washington is currently studying the proposal, but the final decision rests with Trump. Sources cited by Reuters expressed doubts about the possible transfer, citing limited stockpiles and competing operational requirements for the missiles.